So you just finished dinner. You're not hungry, but you find yourself reaching into the refrigerator. You find yourself sticking your hand in that bag. You find yourself grabbing for that snack. Sounds familiar? We've all been there. Just mindlessly eating when our bodies don't really need food. So why does this happen and how can we stop it? Today we're continuing our series talking about the COPE model. That's COPE, that gives us a mechanism for being able to identify and to deal with when we're eating when we're not hungry. Hey, this is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new you, I'm talking to adults with type 2 diabetes who want to reverse their diabetes. And here is the place that we are doing that. If you are new to me, go ahead and put new in the comments because I'd love to welcome you with a hand clap and some music and let you know that we are happy that you are in this space. If you have questions, go ahead and drop those in the comments because we'd love to get to those. Make sure you put a Q in front of those questions as we get into the evening. And you know how we do it here, right? So I've got some monitors that we're going to take a look at here in just a minute. And I've got those off to the side. My Keto Mojo, my Contour, got some test strips. And then, of course, right down below, that is my Dexcom Clarity Report that we'll take a look at as we get into the rest of the show. I do see some of our community members out there, so I want to hop over and say hello really quickly. I see Pamela. Teresa, sorry, first of all, she says, hey, doctor and everyone. And then Pamela says, hello, Teresa. And then, of course, Steve is saying hello. So I'm going to do something here. And the last time I was on, I said I couldn't bring you guys on. So I'm going to bring you on in a different way so we can actually just see all of your comments. There you go. Teresa is saying, hey, doctor and everybody. Hello, Pamela. And then Steve saying, hello, ladies. Glad that you guys are there. And then let's see. Whatever platform you're on, I'm glad that you're here. So should be streaming to all of our platforms right now. I think we've gotten that issue corrected. All right. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at blood sugars, and then we'll hop into our discussion for this episode. And so you'll see there, that's my blood sugar for the last 12 hours. That gray dashed line down at the bottom, that is the number of days that are left in this sensor that I have. And if you guys will recall, I'm actually wearing two sensors, right? One on each arm. This one actually is the Dexcom, and this one is the Libre. I think this is a Dexcom G7. Yeah, Dexcom G7, and this is a Libre Plus. Sometimes I forget which what I have on. But anyway, so I've got those there. And so that's the number of days that's left in the Libre. And above that, you'll see a green area with a little white line, that squiggly line that's going through it. And that is where my blood sugars are. So you'll see for most of today, my blood sugar actually was right around 100, 100, 100. And then I ate lunch. And then it went up to about 150, maybe almost 150. And then came back down to 100, right? So that 150, that was a huge salad. So that happened, I don't know, maybe 1 o'clock, roughly. 1 o'clock, because I went walking at lunch. So I got back 1 o'clock, and then that spiked up 1, 2, maybe 3 o'clock, and then came back down. So you'll see that there. But let's go ahead and take a look at the Dexcom, and let's see what the Dexcom is saying. And so let's go ahead and do a 12-hour as well, so we can see this is comparable to what the Libre is showing. And you'll see for most of the day, oh, if I can get that to work. Wait, come on. Yeah, so for most of the day, we've been kind of hanging out in the 110s, 120s-ish. And then right about 1 o'clock, blood sugar started going up, 150, 140, 159. Ooh, look at that. It got up to 173, at least for a minute. I think that's the only one that was there. So I'm not sure I believe that one, because everything else is like 150s, 159. is a 173, and then the very next one is a 158, and the one right before that was a 159. So these guys will read blood sugars every 5 minutes. Okay, so it's certainly possible that it went from a 159 to a 173 and then back down to 158. Yeah, I suppose so. And then kind of 160s, and then kind of came down, 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 down. So let's see, when did it actually get below 150 and stay? So it came down below 150 a couple of times, but I want to see, where did it go below 150 and actually stay below 150? So this was at 428 or 433, it went below 150 and then continued the spike. And then the first time that it went above 150 was, let's see, was at 2:53. So I had lunch at 1 o'clock. So it took it took almost 2 hours for my body to register all of that, right? So I was in the 100s, and then it took until about 250 some for my blood sugar to go from the 100s up to 151, and then it stayed, so about 3 o'clock, and then it stayed there all the way until 420, I think is what we said, right? 433. Okay, so for 3 o'clock to 4:33, so about an hour and a half. All right, so it took about an hour and a half. So it took about 2 hours for the food to register, and then it took about an hour and a half for the blood sugar to be above 150 and then back down below 150. So I've set my alarms to show up at 150. So that's why that is doing what it does there. Because I want to know. I don't want my alarm to wait until I get to 180. So typically the settings are 70 to 180. I don't want it to get to 180 before I know. So it alarms sooner for me, and I like it that way. All right, so then let's go ahead and let's hop over and let's take a look at what my monitors are showing. So we want to compare this to what we are seeing. So let's go ahead and grab a strip, and as you know, I've got my Keto Mojo and then my Contour. Let's get a strip in there. Go ahead and open up these guys. And I'll tell you, so for lunch I had a huge salad. So I had lettuce, and I'm just taking this out as well because I don't want to run the risk that I have to stick myself twice. So let's go ahead and grab a lancing device. And I think I'll just grab, what I've been doing is just grabbing a regular lancet, opening it up and just poking my finger. But it had a salad. It had lettuce, romaine lettuce mostly, some red cabbage, tomatoes, those cherry tomatoes. I'm going to, I said last week I was going to take a picture and I forgot. And so I'm going to find a finger and just go ahead and get a stick there, and ow, that hurts. Okay, these smaller needles, smaller lancets, they hurt more, by the way, than the larger ones. But you sure get a good drop of blood. So 100 is what the Keto Mojo says, and then the Contour says 108, and you'll see on the screen right now I'm 105 according to the Dexcom. So let's go ahead and let's get this strip in. And so what do you think my ketones are going to be? Let's go ahead and get that one started. And of course, I'm going to let that run for just a couple of seconds, and then we're going to hop off of that screen and come right here. All right, so let's see. Let's see. Say this. He said. So let me pull this back on the screen so you can see what Steve is saying. Steve says this show is for. I guess he's saying is for me. I found I've in the past I found myself at the refrigerator and thinking, "What are you doing? You're not hungry." And Teresa say, "Hey, Pamela. Hey, Steve. Yes." Steve, we all there. We're all there, my friend. All right. So let's hop over and let's get to talking. So by the way, if you've not already done so, go ahead and you recall last week we introduced the refined version of our COPE model, COPE: clarify, observe, pause, and execute. And today we are actually going to be dealing with the C in that COPE model. All right, so we're going to be talking about the clarifying. So why are you really eating? So here's the thing. Here's the thing. Okay, you want to hear a story? Okay, I'm gonna tell on myself. Here we go. So Friday, this past Friday, I ended my fast. Right, we did it on the show. You guys saw me drinking the bone broth and eating the cheese, and I told myself that I was not going to do what I normally do on a Friday when I break, because I broke the fast earlier, by the way, deliberately so that I'm not up at night breaking the fast and then eating, because I know that that is a bad thing for me. Because I'm up, it's late, I'm by myself, the rest of the family is sleeping, I'm here in the studio, I may be doing a video, and the natural tendency is at that time to eat. So I said I was going to break the fast earlier. And I broke the fast here on the show, and we had the bone broth, and we had I had the cheese, and we were supposed to go away. You guys remember that? Yeah. So when the trip was canceled because there were storms. Not here, we didn't have a lot here, but where we were going to Chattanooga, and Chattanooga had a lot of problems with the weather. And so they canceled that, and they told us that I think Friday or Thursday night, that was going to happen. And so I knew it, I anticipated it. But as I mentioned on the show, we were looking forward to doing that. And so now I'm here, broke the fast, and I had bought one of those small cans, Steve, not a big can. I bought a small can of mixed nuts, and I had bought a bag of not the sriracha, but the smokehouse pistachios. So I mixed those together, and I figured that's a healthy snack, right? So just pop a couple of those, and I had some chicken that I ate, so that was gonna be my protein, and I had the bone broth, and I had the cheese. Boom, done. And I had a handful of nuts, right? Done. And I wasn't hungry. Did I say that? I wasn't hungry. But I was here in the study, and I was doing some things, and I was preparing for a talk that I would give on Saturday. And I was Saturday or Sunday. Anyway, one of those days. And so I kept getting up and going out there, and every time I went, I grabbed something. And I get up and I go back out. Every time I went out, and I grabbed something. Right? So before I was done, because remember I said I bought a small can plus the pistachios. When I was done, by the end of that night, and it wasn't even the end of the night, I think it was a couple of hours, that entire can was gone. So the question is, what was going on, right? What was going on? So let's start. So the basics of all that we do, the basics of our reversing diabetes, and we've talked about the pillars. That is, decreasing insulin, suppress appetite, and reduce sugar. All of that can be derailed by our emotions. Let me say it. All of it can be derailed by our emotions. You've heard me say that when the emotions get high enough, right, that roller coaster, when that roller coaster car gets up here, you can yell and scream all you want, but it's coming down. It's moving. And you can decide that I don't want to go down. You can decide that I'm staying right here, but it is coming down. And we've talked about the heat model: habits, emotions, access, and taste. And so, how do we really deal with the emotions that come? That is what the cope model addresses. How do we deal with the emotions that come that will push us in that direction? And the emotions can be many, right? It could be myriad. And we can go through the list, right? I need to create a list of emotions. I'm talking everything from boredom, fatigue, anger, anxiety, depression, and you can go on and on. Now, notice the emotions that I said, right? So people associate those with negative emotions, and we typically say that negative emotions are the ones that drive us to eat. But that is not true. Any emotion that we do not manage well will drive us to eat. I remember being with my family, right? So everybody's around and we're having a good time. And I think I was back in medical school at the time. But with the family, and we'd had a great time. Everybody's there and we're excited and talking to each other. And we watch TV, watch movies. Everybody's eating food, right? And I was just so excited to be with everyone that I could not, at the end of the night, I couldn't turn it off. I didn't know, what do I do with it? And you know what you do with it? You eat. Because it's a buffering behavior. The buffer does not care what the emotion is. All it knows, all your brain knows, is that this is the thing that for the moment gives me some calm. And the cope, clarify, observe, pause, and execute gives us a mechanism to be able to deal with that. So cope. So clarify. Clarify is the first. So the question is, why are you really eating? I'm going to do a deep dive into clarify, right? The foundation, and it's the foundation for emotional control. That's what we're going to put that there. Okay. So the purpose of this step, and this is the clarify step. The purpose of this step is to make sense of your emotional experience by identifying the external event. What happened? So what is it? We'll talk more about that. And then your internal thought. Because remember, the event has no meaning. It has no power until you have granted it a thought. Once you give it a thought, then boom, there it is. It's kind of like Frankenstein's monster, right? It's an empty shell, and it's there until you give it life. It's kind of like in the Marvel movie, right? Remember Jarvis, and they take him and they create the robot, which actually turned out to be Vision at the end. But Vision is a lifeless form until they infuse it with life. So that event has no power. It has no meaning until you give it meaning, and then it takes on a life of its own. Okay? So the event, and then your internal thoughts. That is how you're interpreting it. So we want to understand the source of the emotion. We want to separate it from our assumptions, get a clear picture of what's really going on. And this gives us the power to respond intentionally rather than reacting. Okay? Rather than reacting. So before you take the bite, you need to identify what's really going on. Emotionally, mentally, physically, right? Remember our check-in? That's why the check-in is so important. Clarifying is about awareness. Most of the time, when we eat, when we're not hungry, it's not because our body needs fuel, but because we're trying to soothe something. We're trying to buffer something. So the clarifying step helps us pinpoint what that is and sets us up for success. So that's what the clarifying is all about. So what is clarifying? Right? So clarifying is the first step in the COPE model. We've talked about that. It's all about getting clear on what you're why you're reaching for the food. Now, you've heard me say that often it's not the food that we're chasing after. And that's a hard concept to get sometimes. It's not the food. I know you like hot dogs. I'm sorry. I know I like hot dogs. I know you like pizza. I know you like Chinese food. I have someone today who was telling me they love shrimp fried rice. I know you like it. But the amount that you eat, how often you eat it, has nothing to do with you liking it. It has everything to do with what it does for you. So clarifying is about awareness. It's about awareness. So these are the steps to clarify. Identify the external trigger. Recognize what thought process is going on in us. We want to separate the trigger from the emotion that comes up, because that puts space between them. We want to challenge the thought that we have now given to this trigger, given to this event, right? Because we gave it life. We want to challenge the life that we gave it. We want to reframe the thought, because when we reframe the thought, we're creating a new story and we're creating a new life. And we want to prepare for observation, which is the next step that we're going to be dealing with. Okay, so we're setting ourselves up to walk through this process so that we can be successful at the end. So identify. How do we clarify? First, we need to identify the external trigger. We need to identify objectively what really happened, the specific event or action that led to your emotional reaction. So let's go back to my example. So was I hungry? The answer is no. Okay, so the premise that we're going on in most of this, and I think most of you will agree, that often you are not hungry. Right? So we need to understand the difference between hunger and appetite as well. Right? So on our website we did a show, we did a blog on the difference between hunger and appetite, and we did a show. I don't remember when that was, but we did a show on hunger and appetite. So make sure that you are watching that, because you need to understand that just because your stomach is growling does not mean you're hungry. Growling stomach simply means it's empty. Now, it can show up growling when there is true hunger, but you've got to know the difference. If you just finished eating, if you just got up from the table, you can't be hungry. But sometimes the stomach is growling. Okay? So we want to identify. So I know I was not hungry. So as I get up and I'm going in and out, the question that I've got to ask myself is, what is causing it? What is going on inside of me that's making me reach for that? And what do you guys think was going on? Right? I was feeling anxiety, because remember, anxiety comes from the future. Worry and stress comes from the present. And depression comes from the past. So I was anxious about the talk that I was giving. Right? I was still kind of trying to formulate how I was going to put this together. I had all the information, but how do I put it together in this specific instance? So that was the emotional trigger. That was the emotional thing that was going on. I was anxious. Well, I'm not even going to say anxious yet. The event was this project that I was working on, this talk that I was going to give. The fact that I was putting it together, that I hadn't quite formulated it yet, totally. So that's the event. So then the question comes, right? Right. So we want to anchor our emotions to the actual event that caused it. So whatever was going on within me had nothing to do with food. You guys got that? So it had nothing to do with food. Whatever was going on within me had everything to do with the project I was working on. So in that instance, that brings me down back to reality. Here's the thing. Now that thing I could touch, I could feel, I could adjust, is a real thing now, not just some nebulous thing in my head. So we want to identify that external trigger. We want to realize that it's not the food. And then we want to ask some questions. What just happened that triggered my emotions? What is going on? Right? Steve said that he finds himself in front of a refrigerator thinking, what are you doing? You're not hungry. Great question, Steve. And so pushing that further is, I have that thought. Now I've got to figure out what it is. Is there a specific event? Is there a conversation? Is there a situation? Is there a feeling? Is there whatever's going, whatever? So I got to tease that out. So I've got to ask those questions. Now, here is a beautiful part of all of this. We've talked in the past, one of the tools that we learned is the tool of emotional intelligence, right? So remember that's the fourth one there on that list. Emotional intelligence says that we are mindful, that we are developing a mindful process. We're learning ourselves. We're learning how we respond. We're learning how our body, our thoughts, our mentation. We're learning how different situations, different foods affect us. We're learning how our boredom and our fatigue affects us. Emotional intelligence. So in order for us to be able to process, we have to have emotional intelligence. And all of this kind of winds and blends together. So that I now understand, right? And we'll detail this more. I now understand that when I am in the process of preparing a talk, when I'm in the process of getting that together, I've got to be mindful of how I'm doing that. And if I find myself in that space again, right, I've got to say to my brain, I've got to get my brain to say to me, hey, wait a minute, wait. You remember the last time this was going on? This is what you were feeling. It wasn't the food. It was this thing that was causing it. So how do we change that? So notice what just happened. By identifying what the trigger was, separating it from the emotion, and we'll come more to that in a minute, then I'm able to deal with the actual thing. Remember, it has no life until I give it life. Number 2, we got to recognize our thoughts. Your thoughts or your internal dialogue can amplify, distort, or reshape the emotion that's tied to that event. What that's saying is that you infuse power into the event. Now, the talk that I was giving, the fact that it wasn't organized at the time had no meaning. It was just data. It was just some slides. It was just my talk. It was just the words. So what meaning do you think I gave to it? Yeah. Yeah, so the meaning that I gave to it was, if I don't get this done, I'm not gonna do well. If I don't get this done, then the program is not gonna go well. If I don't get this done, they're gonna be disappointed. If I don't get this done, right? And so all of this is going through my head. So it's not even the fact that the talk was not together. It was the fact that I had interpreted it in a certain way. That conversation you have with your boss, where he says or she says, hey, this report that you gave me, I like it, except on page da 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 da, I would have done this differently. That is constructive criticism. But sometimes we interpret that as, hey, wait a minute, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like me. Right? So we'll come to that in a minute. So once you identify the trigger, the next layer of clarification is to recognize the thought patterns that follow that event. The thoughts, they can be rational, that's aligned with reality, or they can be distorted or exaggerated. And when we have these thought patterns, right, they can fall into one of several categories. 3 of the most common are we catastrophize it. Right? So they said, hey, I don't like what's on page 5. And we're like, they hate the whole report. Right? I can't ever do anything right. I always mess up. I always fail. Right? We catastrophize. We have all or none. Right? It's not gradual. It's not like, oh, they like everything except that. Right? That's the 80-20 rule. So a lot of times we concentrate on the 20 and we forget the 80. And I tell you, I've got to hold my hand up sometimes, right? We had in our office, we do a survey. And I remember a couple of years ago, we did a survey and we sent it out. And this is really, a customer satisfaction survey. So we're a medical practice, but we send it out. Hey, how are we doing? And we went through all this stuff. And people came back and they sent their responses. This is electronic. And so I went in, and so we're now looking through the data, right? Categorizing it and so forth. And I think on one area, we had like 97%. And you know what I said? Hey, what about those 3 people? Or those 3, it wasn't 3 people, it was 3%. So I wanted to go look at the 3% and see what they said. Because my brain was willing to accept their evaluation to the exclusion of everything else. So all or none. There's not, oh yeah, there's some places for improvement. It was like everything is bad. And so they can be exaggerated. Right? So all or none, catastrophizing. So very, very exaggerated. So we want to recognize the thought. So the questions that we're asking, what am I telling myself about this event? What am I telling myself about this event? So here's an interesting thought here. And man, there is so much that's packed into this, right? Let me back up. Let me ask a question. Or let me pose a scenario and then a question. So you've got someone who's diabetic. And they've been diabetic for years, say 10, 15 years. And they are really up on diabetes. When I say up on, I mean they know. They've studied, people have talked to them, they've been to the classes, the whole 9. Yet their blood sugars are uncontrolled. And the answer is, I lost my other mic. And the question is why? Why are they uncontrolled? Because they know they've been to the classes. They have the tools. They've been to the classes. People have been talking to them. They've been diabetic for 10 to 15 years. Right? So the reason has nothing to do with knowledge. It has everything to do with the story that we tell ourselves. And the story that we tell ourselves is what infuses life into things that now are affecting us. And the stories come from our experience. The things that we tell ourselves comes from our past. It comes from our feelings about ourselves. And I'm not talking about hating yourself, right? What I'm saying is not people aren't not controlling their blood sugar because they hate themselves, but it is all interpreted through a certain lens, and that lens gives life to the things that happen to us, so that when we encounter a stressful event, when we encounter a criticism, when we encounter loneliness, when we encounter boredom, when we encounter depression, when we encounter anxiety, all of that has a specific meaning to us. And that's the meaning that we infuse into the event that happens. And that's why it has the power over us. So step 2 is the questions. What am I telling myself about this event? What does it mean to me? So the event to me meant that I was going to not do a good job. They weren't going to like me. And of course, I want everybody to like me. Am I making assumptions, or am I jumping to conclusions? Like when the boss gives you a feedback, when your spouse talks to you, when your mom, your dad, your children talk to you, we have assumptions that we go to based on our experiences, and we color the event. We infuse life into that event with our interpretation. So another question, is my thinking realistic, or am I catastrophizing? Gotta say that fast. So am I thinking realistically? Am I living in reality? Or is something else going on? Right? That's step 2. Step 2, what are the thoughts? What are the thoughts? And then step 3, we have to be able to separate the trigger from the emotion. This is a big one. We got to separate the event, the thing that happened, from the emotion that it creates. The emotion, the key is to recognize that the trigger, the event, is not the same as your emotion. Just because you think a certain way doesn't mean that that's the way it is. We've got to acknowledge that while our emotions are valid, then your emotions are valid. You can be mad. You can be sad. You can be anxious. You can be worried. Whatever the emotion is, it is a valid emotion because it is what has come out of you. It is your emotion. But the emotion does not reflect reality all the time. It is not necessarily a truth. I think I've told this story, and I've heard it. I don't know where I heard it now, but the guy or a gal who's traveling on I think it was a man. He was traveling on the train with a bunch of kids, his kids, and they are just like having a ball. They're talking and yelling and just going crazy on the train. And another passenger is sitting there and he's thinking, oh man, he's a bad parent. He's a bad father. He's not taking care of his kids. Why don't he just, right? So you've been on a plane or bus or somewhere where kids are there. And in your head, you're like, right? And so he's just fuming the whole trip. And so he gets to the end of the trip and he says to one of the, I guess maybe it was a plane because I guess it was a flight attendant. He says to the flight attendant, hey, I wish that guy had taken care of his kids. The trip was so bad, right? So he's going on. And the flight attendant says to him, you have to excuse him because his wife just died and he and his kids are coming from the funeral. So the assumption was that he was a bad parent. But that was not the reality. So just because you think something doesn't make it true. You may feel anxious, but that doesn't mean the situation is truly threatening. Listen, listen, listen. Just because you feel anxious about a situation doesn't mean that the situation is threatening. Remember, you've infused into that situation your beliefs and your thoughts. So what questions do we ask here? The question is this emotional response based on fact? What I'm feeling, is it really based on fact, or is it based on my interpretation? And that takes some doing to be able to go and evaluate and figure that out. Sometimes you got to talk to people. You got to ask. Right? When your spouse says something to you that like cuts you to the core, yeah, you got to go say, hey, honey, make sure you say honey first. This is how I interpreted that. Is that what you really meant? Now, they may say yes, right? So you got to be ready for that. Right? They may say, yes, I really mean to say that. But a lot of times it's like, no, it just came out of my mouth. I wasn't even thinking about that. Right? So how much of my emotions is coming from what actually happened versus how I'm thinking about it? And then we want to challenge the distorted thoughts. Your thoughts may not reflect reality. By challenging them, challenging the thinking patterns, you reduce the intensity of the emotion. Just like that passenger. Once the passenger realized what was going on, the annoyance went away, or at least went down. Right. So once you change the story, once you change the meaning, then it loses its power. And when it loses its power, then the intensity, the drive, the yearning, the craving is going down. Yeah. Right? So there are several types of distorted thoughts, and I think I mentioned a couple of these. Number one, catastrophizing. So thinking in extremes. Everything is bad. All of it's bad. Everything is, right? So all of it. The whole report. I can never do anything right. I never say anything right. I can never. So we're interpreting that event. And if we interpret it that way, then there's a feeling that comes with it. And we respond to the feeling that comes up. And our behavior follows the feeling. The event is still the same, but the feeling drives the behavior. And the behavior drives the result. So we can catastrophize. We can justify. So basically convincing ourselves, for instance, in our case, convincing myself that eating is a reward. Hey, if I can get through this, I'm going to go eat something. Yep. Or, hey, I'm using it to keep myself awake. Or, hey, I'm bored, so this is going to keep me occupied. Right? So we basically are justifying our behavior, justifying our eating. So I keep saying behavior because we can apply this to lots of the behavior, but we are talking here specifically about eating, going into the refrigerator. Right? So catastrophizing, justifying, and then all or none. So if I don't eat now, I'll never eat again. I think I mentioned, and I did said this in my in the talk I gave this past weekend. When we're dealing with addiction and recovery, and people are in the position where they are thinking about slipping. I'm gonna say thinking about this, not that they okay, I'm going to go slip. It's like they're in a situation where it's possible. The idea there is not hey, I need you to not slip for the rest of your life or for the next year or for the next month. I need you to not do that right now. You can do it. You can do it a moment from now. You can do it next week. You can do it an hour from now. But right now, I need you to not do it. But sometimes we think in the extreme, all or none. So that if I don't have something now, if I don't eat something now, if I don't right now, then I'm never going to do it again, be able to do it again. And so we have that all or none thinking. That's another distorted thought process that we have. And so what are some questions that we're asking ourselves? And some of those questions are, is there another way to view this situation? Okay, so I've identified what it is. I'm sitting here. I am working on my project. I'm working on the talk. The talk is not quite the way I want it to be. And so I have interpreted that as a failure on my part or an embarrassment when I give the talk or things won't go well. And I've separated it to understand that the talk is different from my emotion. My emotion is valid. The anxiety that I feel is valid. But the talk is a concrete thing that I could do something about. And so is there another way for me to view this situation? Okay, what's a more realistic interpretation? A more realistic interpretation is, hey, dude, you've got another 24, 36 hours. Okay, let's get it done. And you're going to do well because the knowledge is there. The information is there. Am I jumping to conclusions or making assumptions? Yep. What's the evidence for or against this thought that I have? That if I don't do this just right, that forever, for the rest of my life, I'm going to be branded as the terrible speaker, as the guy who came and didn't do well. What's the evidence? Is this totally, or is this thought reality, or is it true? And what's the worst that can happen if I don't act on this thought? So if it is true, let's just say, hey, it is true that, I'm going to be like the worst speaker that ever came. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to eat to soothe that. What would happen if I didn't eat? I'm not going to die. Right? So what's the worst that can happen in that situation? And then we want to reframe. We want to reframe our thoughts. We want to replace the distorted thought with more balanced, reality-based interpretations to manage the emotional reaction. Hey. I got to come to this one. Reframe. So reframing is really creating a new story. Essentially, that's what we're doing. There's a story that you've told yourself based on what's going on. And you are responding. You have an emotion that you have created, right, based on your interpretation of the event. And you've now infused that event with power. Because remember, it has no power. It has no life until your interpretation is infused into it. Now it generates a response in you. It generates an emotion in you. And your emotion now is going to drive your behavior. So what if the event happened and I changed my interpretation? So in my case, right, here's a silly one. Hey, my project, my talk is not going to be done. Well, they don't like good talks anyway. No, that's a silly one. But you get the idea. I'm creating a new reality. I'm creating a new story. And the beautiful thing is that the brain is so powerful that it will adjust what it thinks. It will adjust its perspective. It will adjust what it looks at and what it tries to surround you with to make what you are now telling it true. So when you change or reframe that distorted thought, whatever the new thought is that you've just created, the brain says, okay, yeah, we'll take that. I like it. And it runs with it. That becomes the new reality. So what questions are we asking here? What's a healthier way to look at this situation? What's a healthier way to look at this situation? Now, this, and I'm going to make this point again, every tool that we learn takes practice. You can't just get up tonight and apply all of the tools. You can apply parts of it, but it takes practice. And so what we need to begin developing is a battery, a toolbox, a bag of tools that we can pull out at any particular time. So positive thinking, positive self-talk, mantras, right? A way to shift our mindset, the heat model, the cope model. All of these things are models. These are tools that we have in our toolbox. So the question is, what's a healthier way to look at this situation? And so how do I begin developing a healthier way of looking at it? I got to fall back on one of my tools. Because at that moment, I may not have a healthier way to look at it. I can't think of a healthier way. Remember, we have always with us an inner coach and an inner critic. And they're always fighting. They're always battling. And the inner critic is always going to remember the bad things. It has a database of unlimited memory. So anything that you've ever done that didn't work out, that didn't go quite well, that smelled of any kind of failure, any kind of setback, any kind of obstacle, the inner critic remembers it. But the inner coach, it's like a guy or gal that's sitting there with a piece of loose leaf paper and a pencil. That's what it's recording it on. And so I can ask you probably right now, right? What was your worst failure in high school? And you'd rattle off 100. And say, tell me something that you did well in high school. You're like, let me see. Well, I can't really think of anything. I graduated. So a tool for strengthening the inner coach is journaling. Write down the stuff that you do well. Celebrate the things that are going well. Journal about it. Celebrate it. Notate it. Document it. So that you can go back now and you can open that book and say, okay, boom, there it is. The same thing here, because the stories that we tell ourselves are based on what the inner critic is telling us. And how do we balance the inner critic? We balance it by strengthening the inner coach. So that at any particular time, one of the tools is go open your journal and read through the journal. See, okay, here are you want to get a success journal, right? Here are the things that I do well. Here are the things that I, right? So when the inner critic is saying to you, you never do anything good. You can never write a report. You're never going to succeed. You never get benefits, right? You're going to go, hold on a second. Wait. Let me go look at my journal, open up the journal and say, well, wait a minute. Last year I did this. And this year I did this. And this is a success. And that's a success. And this is a success. And that's a success. And so notice what just happened. Right? We've changed the dynamic because we've strengthen our inner coach. So one of the tools. How can I handle the emotion without turning to food? Whoa. Okay. So this is the crux of the matter. And this is the decision point for people who are drug addicts, alcoholics, people who are sexaholics, people who are foodaholics, people who think they just like food, people who gamble too much, right? This is the crux of it right now. How can I handle this emotion without turning to food? I'm going to write this down because we might have to come back and do a whole show on this. But here's a thought. Here's a thought. If you don't eat right now, you're not going to die. It's number one. I want you to understand, right? And I'm not being flippant, and I'm not negating the urge or the drive. If you don't eat something right now, you are not going to die. And I'm not talking about people who are starving, right? We're talking about here in our space. So that's the first thing to understand. Number two is to understand that it's okay to feel uncomfortable and not eat. Sometimes we are so used to pacifying, buffering, removing ourselves from the uncomfortable that we never learn how to be in an uncomfortable situation and tolerate it. This goes back to the baby. I think I told this story before, right? So the little baby who's born, and we put him in the bassinet, and the baby's crying. Well, one of the things that the baby has to learn is how to self-soothe, how to soothe themselves, how to be in an uncomfortable situation and be okay. And many of us as adults have not learned that. So if I don't eat, I'm not going to die. And it's okay to be uncomfortable and not eat. And food is not going to solve the situation. So eating, as many times as I went out there and ate the nuts, I still have the project to do. I still had to put the talk together. It didn't solve my problem. So how do I handle this emotion without turning to food? And that's what the COPE model is going to help us do. But first, we've got to understand, what is it? What is it that's triggering it? We got to understand that it's not a part of me. It is the thought that I'm giving life to that event. And then we want to prepare for the next step, which is the observation. Remember, clarify, observe, pause, and execute. So get ready to shift focus from your thoughts to your body's physical response to the emotion, right? Because we're going to feel it somewhere in our heads, in our arms, in our legs. Our heart rate's going to go up. We're breathing a lot faster. Our stomach is going to churn. So we're getting ready to switch from, okay, what's going on up here? What am I telling myself? What thoughts am I giving, or power am I giving to that event? To, okay, now I've got to see, okay, what's it doing to me on the inside? So once you've clarified the event and the thought surrounding it, the next step is to observe how your body is reacting to it. Clarifying prepares you to fully understand how your emotions are manifested physically. It's about awareness. It's about being in a space, and this is clarifying. It's about being in a space so we understand all the things that are going on. All the things that that we need to understand in order to set ourselves up for success. So that's clarify. The first step in our COPE model. And once again, those steps are: identify the external trigger, recognize your thoughts, right? So the event happens. What thoughts am I having that infuse that event with power? We want to separate the fact, separate the trigger, the thing that happened, from the emotion. They are two different things. I can do something about the trigger. The emotion is valid, but it's not reality. I want to challenge the distorted thoughts, all or none, catastrophizing, justifying. I want to reframe the thought because now I'm telling a different story. And I want to prepare for observation, which is our next step in the COPE model. Amazing, amazing. I love it, love it, love it. I love this stuff, y'all. I'm telling you, this changes how I do things. This changes how I think. It changes my behavior. And it takes practice, 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 practice. All right, so let's hop over and let's take a look at my report, which has just logged out. So let me go ahead and log back in. Let's see. So if you guys are out there, have you had occasion? I know Steve said that he had some things happen. He was in the refrigerator. Let's see. Steve says, "Hey Pamela." Okay, let me do this first. I'm going to put that up first before we go to my report. Okay. So hey Pamela, Publix has Planters nuts. Buy one get. See, Steve, why you had to say that? Why you just messing me up. I picked up a large can of cashews today and a can of macadamias. All right. So do you really have to tell me that, Steve? Exactly. That's what I'm thinking, Pamela. Right? He didn't have to tell us that. It was a bad habit. LOL. Pamela says, my public offers ends on Tuesday, so we couldn't resist the price. Oh, Steve says that. So don't make me go. Public is 5 minutes away. I need to actually go to Publix to get something, so maybe I'll stay in tonight. Teresa said, I love public BOGO sales. Me too, says Pamela. Gotta save money nowadays. So I haven't had an appetite for much in the last 4 to 5 days. No appetite. Only eating a little once a day. Is that okay? So Pamela, good question. Depends on what's going on. Okay, so if you are on medication that's doing that, then yeah, because that's what it's supposed to do. She said, I'm not sick, just not hungry. One of the things that happens sometimes is with the fasting, if people are fasting, is that during their non-fasting days, if they are not stimulating themselves with lots of carbs and highly processed foods, then their appetite actually goes way down. Right? So that's one of the benefits of fasting. Steve said, Pamela, my wife and I eat one meal a day. And then it's just Jennifer says, hey, howdy all, just logged on. Hey, Jennifer, welcome. Thanks for stopping by. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at report, which is up now. And let's hop over let's look at this view. Okay. So you'll see there that my average is 127. And that is a 14-day average. So 127. My time in range, 91%, 70 to 180 is my target. Glucose management indicator is 63, right? That means if I were to get, based on these numbers, that's what my A1C would approximate. I'm going to look at the 90-day because that's the one that's more accurate probably. And so 135 is what my average is. Glucose management indicator down here at 6.5. In target 86. Target 70 to 180. And so I'm going to be getting my A1C done here in the next couple of weeks, right? So we'll be able to see what the A1C is correlated with what this average is, right? So that's one that we'll kind of review. I'm not sure which show we'll do that, but once I get it, we'll bring that on. Yeah, I'm setting up to see my doctor here in a little bit. Right. So if we look at my daily graphs, when that comes up, so remember I stopped fasting back. Let's see. So we stopped fasting on Friday, right about here. And so blood sugars, 80s and 90s. For the rest of that day, got up to about 107. See that? Isn't that amazing? So that's post fasting. And then look at the whole next day, right? So 100, 110. I think we got up to maybe 130. Yeah, 130, 140 right here, 150. 120s, 120s, 120s. So all day. And so this is eating a pretty, I mean, I ate lots of cheese and lots of nuts, but we had chicken and I don't think I had any rice. You can always tell when I've had rice or potato because it gets way up. But 120s, 130s for most of that day. That was Sunday. That was yesterday. And then all today, actually doing pretty good up until lunchtime. Right? So look at that. So at lunchtime was when we kind of had that big hump. And then now we're back down. Okay. So we'll take a look at that. And so what do you think my ketones are? Let's hop over there really quickly. Let's grab this one. Get this off the screen. And let's get my Keto Mojo app up. Keto Mojo, get this off and go ahead and start it up. And we'll see that come out. And boom, boom, boom. All right, let's sync. So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Drop it in. Drop it in the chat. Drop it in the chat. What do you think it's going to be? All right, let's see. Okay, so 100 was the blood sugar, and then 0.2 is the ketone. Remember, ketones less than 0.5 considered normal, which is where I am. 0.5 to 1.5 considered nutritional ketosis. And then, of course, above 1.5 considered therapeutic ketosis. Right? All right. So I do want to say one thing, and let me see if I can pull this up really quickly. Let's see, what's the best way to do this? We did meet a milestone today. And so thank you. Shout out to all of you who helped us achieve this. Let's see. How do I grab that? And so the milestone was that as of today, we have reached 4,000 subscribers. Actually, now we're actually over 4,000 subscribers here on the channel. So thank you all for your support and your continued engagement. Right. So this is all due to you and all the other folks that are out there that are coming on and finding value. So thank you for everyone who has come through and are a part of this. Yeah. Just very excited about that. I think we're actually over 412 or something like that right now. So yay. Okay, so Jennifer's saying hi to everybody. So Teresa said she thought my ketones were going to be 0.4. And Teresa is clapping. Congratulations from Jennifer and from Pamela. Thank you all for that. Oh, Jennifer, let me see. I missed your message up here. She says, "Hey Jennifer, missed you. Glad to see you." This is from Teresa. And Jennifer said, "Busy canning apple pie." Jennifer. Okay, I'm putting that on the screen. Where is it? There we go. She said, "Busy canning apple pie filling from our neighbor's tree. Trying allulose as a sweetener on some." Hey, tell me how that is, Jennifer. When you, I'm assuming you've tried it already. I have not used it, but I'm told that it's very good. So just if you have tried it, if you've tasted it, let me know how it is. If you've not, when you eat some of that pie filling, I want to know what it's like. Okay, awesome. All right. So here we are, y'all, at the end of this month, and so excited to be on. We're coming back, and we're walking through the COPE model, right? Clarify is the C. We are observing, pausing, and then executing, right? So make sure that you join us. If you've not already done so, go back and watch the show where we introduced it. We refined it last week, and now we just finished Clarify, which is the very first component of the COPE model. This is a model that helps us to identify and to put grounding into the things that push us. Where we've talked about the heat model. The model tells us what the things are, but the COPE allows us, it gives us a mechanism, a tool for being able to overcome those triggers. Right, so that's what we're doing here. As always, I'm glad that you're here. Remember, we educate, we empower, and we encourage. We educate with the shows, with the blogs, with the podcasts that we do. We empower with the tools, just like we are learning the COPE model right now. And then we encourage with the community that you are a part of, that you're building. And thank you for the 4,000 subscribers, 4,000 plus now. That is part of the community. The HEAT model gives us the triggers that will push us to eat off of our plan when we've decided not to eat something or eat a different way. They are the habits we formed, the emotions that we allow to build up, the access that we have around us when we haven't cleaned up our environment, and the taste, the perfect combination of sugar, salt, and fat that makes us eat that thing and chase after it for what it does for us. The calm that it brings, the memory that it restores, and that temporary relief, that buffering between us and the emotions. Remember our pillars for reversing diabetes: decreasing insulin, suppressing the appetite, and reducing sugar. That is a huge part of what we do when we fast. For those of you who are fasting, those of you who are on a ketogenic diet, and there are several ways that we can do this. Remember, fasting is a tool, but you can do this in other ways. Part of it is really utilizing the COPE model to interrupt yourself before you reach for that thing that you were going to eat. Very, very important. And then when you show up, when you come on, I want you to make sure that you are joining the challenges. We have one once a month. We got a new one that's coming up here in a little bit as we change over the month. But make sure that you get in there. Don't just let these be things you listen to. Practice, practice, practice. All the tools, they require practice, because when you need them, you don't want at that point to be the time when you are pulling them out. So we want to practice. Okay. Number two, I want to make sure that when you come, you're sharing your story. When we see your successes, when we hear you where you've gone and the things that you've done and the benefits that you're getting, we know that we can do it as well. And then we know that if you can do it, we can do it. We can share with other people, and they can do it as well. If you're having challenges, let us know so we can rally around you, so we all know that we're not alone. And then tell somebody else. Hey, there's a place where we are learning how to chart our destiny. We're learning how to change our metabolic health. We're learning how to reverse diabetes, because we have unlimited potential in us to chart that destiny. All we've got to do is access it. All right. As always, glad that I'm here able to spend some time with you, my community, and to hang out. We've got some check-ins that are coming on later this week. We've got videos from the vault, 9 o'clock on Saturday at 9 Central. This week in review on Sunday at 6 a.m. And, of course, we're back here in the saddle, Dwain Woode, MD, 7 p.m. Central here on Dwain Woode, MD Live. Thank you for joining me. Glad to be here. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health and your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level. And in this year, new you. Good night, everybody. We'll see you at our next show.